In my view, there are two very important reasons why teachers in middle school and high school should be concerned about the fluency with which their children can read text. The first one is it's linked to reading comprehension. The link between reading fluency and reading comprehension is very well established. We know that it's a very strong link in elementary school, and it remains an important link in middle and high school. The next reason that we should be concerned about fluency in middle and high school students is because we want students to be able to finish their work on time. And students who have to labor over text, who are very disfluent in reading, have to spend a lot of extra time in doing their assignments. This is frustrating for them, and they enjoy reading less. And so it's important for us to keep in mind the kind of work we can do to help students increase their reading fluency. From the scientific point of view, there are really two major influences on fluency in children as they're learning to read. The first one is whether or not they can recognize the words in the passage that they're reading by sight or at a single glance. Teachers call this their sight word vocabulary. So if a student is reading a 6th grade level passage and they can recognize 97% of the words in that passage by sight or at a single glance, they're going to be reasonably fluent in reading it. But if they have to stop and decode or guess at a high proportion of the words, they're going to struggle with that text and they're not going to be very fluent. The other thing that influences how fluently kids read text is actually whether or not they're comprehending it. There was an interesting study done a number of years ago that showed that students actually read words considerably faster when they read them in organized text than when they read them as lists of single words. So that if a student has an idea about the meaning of the passage they're reading, this actually helps them to read the words, new words they come to in the text, and they read more fluently. So the real key for helping kids who are not so fluent in learning to read, there's two keys actually. One is to help them have much more practice in reading, where they actually have a chance to read words more frequently and in a repeated way, and then also to remind them or to work with them so that they are always thinking about the meaning of what they're reading, because that actually helps to increase their fluency. One of the ideas about increasing reading fluency in children that's perhaps not as widely understood as it needs to be understood is that if children practice reading a lot, but if they're not reading accurately, that doesn't produce as much improvement in their fluency as if they are reading the passages accurately. That's why it's very important to pick the text of the right level of difficulty. When we have children practice reading text as a way of increasing their fluency, we want them to be able to read it at about 95 to 97% accuracy. What we know from research is that there are 2 or 3 primary ways or things teachers can do to help children increase their reading fluency. The most common recommendation that we find in the research literature is to create opportunities where children can reread the same passage over a number of times, let's say 3 or 4 times, with an emphasis on reading it more fluently each time that it's read. This is called repeated reading, and there are a variety of ways that teachers set this up in their classroom. Some people use a device called reader's theater, where children have to prepare parts that they then read in a play or something that's acted out in class, giving them a good excuse to reread material several times. Other teachers use what they call partner reading, where they pair a child who's a really strong reader with, say, a child who's a less strong reader, and they have the strong reader read the passage first, and then the less strong reader read it another time, and they go back and forth so that the passage gets read 2 or 3 times. And the reason that repeated reading is an effective technique is it allows children to see the same words in a fairly close period of time. So, for example, if a 6th grade child doesn't know how to recognize the word suggestion, for example, at a single glance, if he just reads broadly, he might only encounter that word maybe once in every 2 or 3 weeks worth of reading. And this won't be enough to help him learn to recognize that word at a single glance. So we set up repeated reading opportunities where it'd be the same paragraph that would have that word in it 3 or 4 times, and he gets 3 or 4 closely spaced trials in learning that word. So that's one of the reasons why repeated reading is one of the commonly used methods for increasing students' reading fluency. Another method, of course, is to find interesting and engaging material that students want to read so that they just increase the total amount that they read. For older children, actually, there's some issues right now about whether or not repeated reading works better than just really broad and deep reading. And so I would recommend that teachers use both of those methods routinely in their classroom if their goal is to increase reading fluency in children. A very important question that we have to think about when we are concerned about fluency in older students is, how fluent do you need to be? In elementary school, we have benchmarks for the end of first grade, end of second grade, end of third grade that we recommend that teachers shoot for by the end of the year. We know that the average oral reading fluency rate for kids in middle school is about 150 words per minute. If you take a large sample of children, ask them to read passages at their grade level, they read them about 150 words a minute on average. But do you have to read that fluently in order to be able to comprehend passages well? Probably not. We know that if you're reading at 30 or 40 words a minute, that's going to seriously impair your comprehension of what you're reading. But we don't know for sure yet the exact level at which, the exact rate at which you need to be able to read to do well, let's say, on the FCAT. We know that the passages on the FCAT are quite long in middle school and high school, so that the more fluent you are, the easier it will be to read them. But if a student's highly motivated, if they've got a good vocabulary, if they're thinking actively about what they read, they can probably achieve good performance on the FCAT with a lower level of fluency than if they weren't strong in those other areas. So I think it's important for us to keep in mind that although fluency is a very important goal and we want children to read fluently, it's probably a mistake to insist that every child achieve average levels of fluency, because if the child is thinking while they're reading, if they have a good vocabulary, and if they are motivated to understand what they read, they probably don't have to be fluent at an average level in order to comprehend the material at their grade level, at least at a proficient level. I would like to make a point about the fact that fluency remains an important dimension of reading skill even into high school. A few years ago at the Florida Center for Reading Research, we actually conducted a study with a large number of children in 3 different locations in Florida, in which we examined how important fluency was to performance on the FCAT in 3rd grade and 7th grade and in 10th grade. And we discovered that it was extremely important to good performance on the FCAT in 3rd grade. It had a moderate level of performance moderate level of importance to good performance in the FCAT in 7th grade, and a slightly less it was slightly less important in 10th grade, but it was still accounted for a significant amount of variability in comprehension on the FCAT. So I think it's something that we can't lose sight of after elementary school. We know that we have to keep working on it. It's important for teachers in middle and high school to realize that fluency continues to grow in very important ways during 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and even 10th grades. Although the average reading rate of students doesn't increase much beyond 150 words per minute if you ask them to read grade-level text, what we have to remember is that each year a child moves from 6th to 7th and 8th grade. There are more difficult words that occur in the text. So if a child in 6th grade doesn't read enough to master most of the 6th grade level words, when they go up to 7th grade level text, their fluency will actually decline because there will be so many of the words in that text that they can't recognize at a single glance. That's why it's really important for students to do broad and deep reading and to just have lots of reading experiences in 6th grade so that they can learn all the words that they're supposed to in 6th grade, and then when they move to 7th grade, they have a whole bunch more words to learn. When they move to 8th grade, they have a whole bunch more new words to learn. And as they learn all these new words each year that they go up the grade levels, then they maintain average levels of fluency. But if they don't read enough to learn the new words that are coming into text with each increasing grade level, then their fluency will gradually decline, and by the 10th grade they could actually be a less fluent reader, even though they were a fluent reader in 6th grade. It's very important to realize that we don't achieve a certain level of fluency and we sort of maintain that. Our word reading capacity has to continue to grow, as well as our comprehension skills, if we're going to maintain average levels of fluency when we move from 6th to 7th to 8th to 9th grade.